We're going to jump into our growing innovation panel. We have three of the panelists. We have Danielle Allaire of Aurora Honey, who's a pioneer beekeeper here in the Northwest Territories. We'll get to Danielle in a bit. Also, many of you may be familiar with Ray Solotki, the executive director of the Anubic Community Greenhouse. Ray will be by and as well too to share some of the work that they're doing at the Anubic Community Greenhouse. But today, to start us off, I would like to welcome Amy LeMay, the Executive Director of the Territorial Agri-Food Association. Amy is also a research associate with the Northern Agricultural Futures, an initiative based at Wilfrid Laurier University that identifies barriers to local agriculture and builds capacity. So to get us off started right today on day 2 of the Anti-Poverty Roundtable, we'd like to welcome Amy. Amy, the virtual roundtable is yours. Welcome and nice to see you. Oh, just Amy, if we could get you to, I think you're muted.
I had unmuted myself. Okay, let me start
again.
There we go. Here we go. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this roundtable session. I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet so many new people who I hope to connect with over the next couple of months as the Territorial Agri-Food Association ramps up. The first thing that you should probably know about me is that I'm from the South. I live in Niagara, one of Canada's major agricultural regions. I have worked in and with the agri-food industry for more than 30 years, mostly in research, innovation, and policy. I have also studied agri-food industries in the Southern US, Brazil, and in China. How I came to work in the Northwest Territories as the interim executive director of the Territorial Agri-Food Association is a long story, and one best told in person over a good meal, which I hope to be able to do very soon. I can tell you why I chose to take on the role of ED for the TAA. It was because of the vast opportunities and potential I saw for building a vibrant and sustainable agri-food industry in the Northwest Territories, one that would make a significant contribution to food security, poverty reduction, and economic development through entrepreneurship and job creation. It is a rare opportunity. In fact, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to be part of the birth of a new industry. And that is what is happening in the NWT with the agri-food industry. It is an emerging industry. And if I had to give a title to my presentation, it would be the promise of the NWT agri-food industry. Yesterday, during the first breakout session, we were asked to talk about our vision for a healthy NWT food system. The Territorial Agri-Food Association sees an agri-food industry as a key piece of that vision. For the TAA, a healthy, sustainable NWT food system integrates traditional foods, local commercial production, processing and distribution, community gardens, and imported market foods. When I say agri-food industry, I'm talking about commercial operations, agribusinesses for producing and growing food, food processing and distribution throughout the territory. I'd like to talk a little bit more about those three things: production, processing, and distribution. I like to think of them as a value chain. I know it's a little bit of a linear way of thinking, but it's pretty common in the agri-food industry. Another way to think about it is supply chain, but that doesn't capture the value that gets added to food as it moves from production, processing, and distribution. And adding value is a critical way that the agri-food industry contributes to food security, poverty reduction, and economic development through entrepreneurship and job creation. And the TAA is committed to supporting and representing this value chain. Let's start with production. There's crop production and there's livestock production. I want to focus on crop production because there are significant barriers to livestock production in the territory that doesn't make it a really viable business opportunity at this point. So what's the future of crop production in the Northwest Territories? There are going to be limitations to what you can grow and where. but there's so much potential. Sarah Brown mentioned yesterday that climate change is opening up new northern agri-food frontiers that will act as both climate change adaptation strategies and mitigation strategies. The main crops will be horticultural, vegetables, berries, and fruit, rather than large commodity crops like corn, soybeans, or wheat. The land base in the ecosystem in the territory is not suited for these types of crops, and they also don't really directly contribute to the type of food security that is needed in the NWT. Crop production will be small scale, but that doesn't mean it's not a viable business opportunity. Millions of farmers around the world make a living as small shareholders growing crops on small plots of land. I once saw Chinese farmers growing vegetables on plots of land alongside of railway tracks. Greenhouses and market gardens are definitely a future for crop production in the territory. And then what about plants that are currently part of a traditional diet? Are there any plants that can be developed as crops? When we think about processing, food processing, this is the part of the value chain that I think definitely needs more attention. There are so many possibilities for food processing in the territory, and not just the crops that are being grown, but also the traditional foods. I really think the folks in Fort Good Hope have something, are onto something with their food trailer, making and selling mucksucks burgers, cutting and packaging the meat and the fish. Processing can be as minimal as cleaning and packaging the plant, the crops that you grow, and selling them at the farmer's market. It can also be something more involved, like the mucksucks burgers, or jams and preserves made from native berries or cultivated berries. What about frozen French fries from NWT potatoes? Agritourism and culinary are also really interesting opportunities to consider. The key point is that processing is going to be critical to food security because production, that is fresh vegetables and produce, are only available for a short period of time. For food security, you need to make sure that local food is available all year round, and processing is how you do that. The barriers to starting a small processing business are not overwhelming. And again, the folks in Fort Good Hope have shown us that that's not a barrier that's not overcomable. There are also lots of funding opportunities for agri-food entrepreneurial and business startups. And the one that I will mention is the Agriculture and Agri-Food Indigenous Agriculture and Food Systems Initiative. And I'll put the link to that in the chat box after my presentation. And definitely the TAA is here to help you with those opportunities, to help you source out funding and help you develop the funding proposals. Finally, let's talk about distribution, and it again is key to food security. The Northwest Territories needs a distribution system in order to move food from where it's grown and produced and processed to where it needs to be eaten and consumed and into the communities. Distribution can mean many things, like farmers markets, online sales, and local retail and grocery stores. There's been lots of discussion since I've been working in the territory about a food hub, a central location where local food is collected and then moved into the communities. Regional distribution services are going to be key to this. Distribution also includes storage. And distribution is important for reducing dependence on imported market foods. We've seen the issues with those supply chains that make the Northwest Territories vulnerable to things like a pandemic and forest fires that close off roads. Distribution is probably one of the most challenging parts of the value chain, the one that will take collaboration and ingenuity to figure out. And there are certainly challenges to building a Northwest Territories sustainable agri-food industry. And the TAA is currently working on an analysis to identify those challenges and better understand what needs to be done, but more importantly, how we can leverage the opportunities. And innovation is the key. And I can tell you, after working in innovation for 30 years,
Amy, I'm going to have to
do with
jump in.
agri-food in the Northwest Territories. Sorry?
Oh, sorry, Amy, I just sort of have to jump in here. We're just tight on the agenda. I do not like cutting people off, and there's a wealth of information and knowledge that is coming from you. We have some other panelists, though, and we have to.
I thought I had 10 minutes.
About around six. Just.
I'm sorry. I did this for 10 minutes. I apologize.
Hey, no worry. I got so much. I mean, you had me at French fries and and the value system.
Okay.
So I just apologize for the interruption, but like 6 minutes.
No, that's great.
All
Okay.
right. Well, thank you very much there, Amy. Up next, we're going to go to the executive director of the Anubic Community Greenhouse and hear from the work and from Ray. Ray, the Anti-Poverty Roundtable floor is virtually yours.
Thank you. Great things to segue into what I have to talk about. Thank you, Amy. I'm actually on the board of the Territorial Agri-Food Association as well. So Amy, it was great to hear all those wonderful ideas we've all been talking about. I'm going to be really quick. So a lot of you have probably heard about the Anubic Community Greenhouse. It's our 22nd year of operation. I'm not here to talk about the community greenhouse. We have had a lot of great programs I'd love to talk to a lot of you about. In 2017, we started a new internship program in which communities in the Beaufort Delta were able to offer employment in their own small community greenhouses instead of myself traveling around from community to help run these. This created no community buy-in, the original program, and also was a really colonial type model of sending me, this girl from the South, to go teach people. So we've been working really hard to flip the script and look at Indigenous food security through growing your own food. This is, people being able to grow food that complements local traditional food and work on their own decisions on what they want to grow. And, people already make those decisions in the grocery store every day. So we're hoping that this year sees a revamp of this program. We were kind of dead in the water last year because of COVID, but we have received some funding to do a community tour in the Beaufort Delta, which fingers crossed we'll be able to do shortly to get those garden societies back on track. But again, that's not our real purpose. We were just awarded funding in December from CanNor for their Idea North Fund, in which we are creating a year-round hydroponic greenhouse. It's not really the right wording because it's not really a greenhouse. We're doing a hydroponic food production facility here in the north. This is going to be in partnership with the Gwich'in. They have kindly offered us some land, and we're looking at this as a stepping stone for exactly what Amy was talking about, creating a change to how we think about supply chain, how we think about adding value, how we think about our economy when it comes to food, how we think about who is involved in food production in the Northwest Territories. For us, the idea here is that we become a space for people to decide what they want to do in their communities. We've been doing this on a very small scale, but right now what we want to do is see this facility be up and running and then use it as a jumping off point. We're actually working with the University of Saskatchewan as well on some ideas to actually come out with some really good hard facts of what we're producing, what kind of calorie content, what kind of buy-in, how much does this cost, what does this actually mean, and then be able to scale it to the communities. We also understand very clearly that lettuce is not going to solve problems of food security in the north. But we do believe that a switch of how we look at how our food is produced could really make an actual viable difference. If we're able to harvest vegetables year round up here, what's going to stop us from having chickens year round up here, or pigs or cows or any of these things? I went to the Circumpolar Agricultural Conference in Rovaniemi, Finland last year, and they have cows in a very similar climate. It's all closed loop, it's all closed in. There's no reason we can't be doing some of the things they're doing in other places with some of the innovative ideas that are coming out right now. We have a lot of people that need work. Agriculture is a wonderful place to work. It's one of the most basic, important things. I got to eat. I haven't had breakfast yet and I'm feeling a little bit crazy. So food is important. Food brings us together. Food is something that we'll go to work to make money to buy food. So this is something that we can show. If you do this in a more local scale, this also will help our community members by creating jobs, by bringing money into our economy from a very close space. Not to disparage our grocery stores or our trucking companies, but every dollar we spend in a store that is purchasing from the South is money that's leaving our community very rapidly. So the way we see this as a stepping off point to be able to show people, look, we can grow food locally. Look, you can buy food locally. And then look, it has a direct correlation to who has a job, how fresh is our food. Anyone who lives in the north has been into the grocery store. Yesterday, I wanted to make tacos and I had to use cabbage instead of lettuce. I know my life is terrible, but how nice would it be if I actually could go stop in at this beautiful facility and purchase fresh local vegetables, even just lettuce and herbs and pak choi and kale and spinach that was grown and harvested that week. And that money is actually going back to hiring a local person. So this is kind of how we're seeing this facility. I know there's a lot of commentary out there as to the viability of these shipping container greenhouses. And we're hoping to be a beacon of an actual business model that is also a community space as well. We also see this as a jumping off point to look at what else could we be doing? As I said, the animals and things, but also could we add a warehouse and use the heating and the lights to also grow things in Dutch buckets, or do potatoes and carrots and onions, the really big ticket heavy items that we really need in our communities that are very, very expensive and really difficult to get here. So I have put my email on my name. So if anyone wants to contact me, I'm more than happy to chat about what we're doing. I really do encourage people to look at not just if the funding is there, but if you have a project that actually would be helpful in your community, how to go for that. We've been very lucky that over the past 5 years, we've been working on this project, not only with CanNor, but with the government of the Northwest Territories, Industry, Tourism, and Investment. They've been great supporters of ours to try to come up with ways to not just apply for funding, but actually to have a project that is worthwhile of doing that application. I will wrap up now. Like I say, please reach out, ask me any questions. Please follow us on Facebook and check out our website as things progress. We're really hoping to share our knowledge and all of us stop working in silos and actually share the details we have. So that's all for me.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Ray. The promise of an agri-food industry, indeed. So amazing work. And yeah, you're right. Falls along right in line with what Amy was talking about as well, too. Up next, third on our panel, we have Danielle Allaire of Aurora Honey. He's a pioneer beekeeper here in the Northwest Territory and has one of the largest operations with 30 hives, which are currently overwintering in Fort Smith. So to talk a little bit more about that from Fort Smith, we have Danielle here. Danielle, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. I have a few pictures that I would like to show there. So if we could start with the first picture. Yeah, so this is the, I've got this label that we've done, my wife and I, quite a few years ago. We started in Fort Simpson. And when I first started beekeeping in 1998 in Fort Simpson, I started with 4 hive, and then I wasn't really selling any honey. I used to give honey to friends and families. But as I grew, get more hives, more equipment, and beekeeping is very expensive. So I started selling my honey just mainly to offset my cost. Could we go to the next slides, please? This is just a picture I took here a couple of years ago. This is in Fort Smith. In the springtime, I purchased nukes. It's called nukes from a beekeeper down in Alberta. And those are boxes with about 6 to 7 frames of bees. Those are from bees that overwinter. And so they do a split, and then they had a new queen, and usually they will put 3 or 4 frames with larvae in there. And that's where I starts my hive with. So there's between about 8 to 10,000 bees in those boxes there. And then I have electric fence, of course, because there's always the issue with bears. Next slide, please. So from there, after the bees are starting to expand and get more bees in numbers, so I transferred them to this box is 9 to 10 frame boxes. So this picture is like taking probably about early June. I usually get my bees shortly after the long weekend in May. Next slide, please. Okay, so here, if you look just about in the center of the pictures, there's a queen there, and there's bees. And if you look at this frame, it has everything in there. Basically, it has some honey. You could see there right to the top left corner. There's also some larvae, those little white, I guess they're larvae. They're a few days old. They're not quite capped. And those ones, the ones that were capped there, those are larvae that are capped. So what I like to see is the good queen that lays a lot of eggs, so you get a lot of bees. So a good hive at the end of the summer could have anywhere between 40 to 60,000 bees in a hive. Next slide, please. So here's a frame there. with there's quite a few. This is all mostly larvae. So that's how I could tell when we got a good queen, a good hive. The more larvae are in there, the more bees, like I said, and then the more bees, of course, the more honey. Next slide, please. Here is we're doing extraction. So that's the extraction is done usually at the end of August, beginning of September. So here's a frame just about all full of honey. You could see there's the wax here to hold the honey. So you know when you got wax, when it's sealed, it's capped with wax, and you know the honey is ready for harvest. So I do the extraction in my garage there in Smith. When we do the extraction, usually I crank up the heat in my garage to 30 Celsius, because that's what that's the temperature of the honey when it comes out of the hive, 30 Celsius. Next picture, please. So here we're just removing the wax that we salvage, and then with the wax, after we process the wax, my wife makes a hand cream with it. That's quite popular. And we also make candles with it as well. We don't get too much wax. Actually, wax is worth, down south, it's worth more than honey. So the amount of wax which you get versus the amount of honey it's quite a small fraction of it there. So here we're just preparing to put to clean the wax off the frames, and then we're going to put them in extractor, which should be the next pictures, please. So this is my extractor that I purchased a few years ago. This electric too. I used to have a small extractor, and I used to extract my honey when I was in Simpson in my kitchen. So you could imagine the mess. There was like bees flying around and wax and on the floor, and it was just a real mess. But now we do it in the garage, and I got this extractor. It's a 20 frame extractor, and the extractor I had before, I had to crank it by hand. So there was really a lot of work, but now I just have to press one button, and actually it does a really good job. I have this, I purchased this extractor there about 4 years ago, and I'm really glad I have this extractor now. Next picture, please. Here is we're doing the filtering of the honey. We filter our honey in 4 different screens, so the honey is nice and clean. When it comes out the extractor, there's mixture of waxes. Sometimes you have the odd dead bees in there, so it has to be really filtered. And then like I said, we do 3 screens, 1 large screen first, and then we do like a cheesecloth type, but we use the synthetic type, so it does a really good job at cleaning the honey. And you have to ensure that you're in a warm place. If it's too cold, the honey gets cold and it doesn't filter very well. Next picture, please. So then after it's it's filtered, and then we have this little drum there, and that's how we filled our little container. So this is the 1 kilo pail. That's the most popular one. We do the 1 kilo pail in the 500 milligram pail, but the 1 kilo pail there, those are our big sellers. Next picture, please. Here is the picture was taken in Fort Simpson. This is my mother-in-law there. She was there and helping us out. And so that was our harvest for that year. At the time when I was in Simpson, I had about 12 to 16 hive. Now I've increased that to 30, and I'm hoping to go up to 40 here this coming years. So right on the table there's about a little over 400 pounds of honey. You look at the production here in the north, it's all from wildflowers. It's not like down in the Peace River country where it's agriculture honey. So on average, a hive down in Alberta will produce 140 pound. My hive varies from, it could be as low as 25 pound average per hive to as much as 50 pound. And I've had hive that produce well over 150 pound for one hive, but those are pretty rare. Next picture, please. So, and then after we extract the honey, then we have to feed the bees. So this is one of the ingredient I used, and we feed the bees with sugar and water. It's a mixture of 2 to 1, 2 parts of sugar for 1 part of water. Actually, this fall, after we extracted the honey, we fed the bee 1,700 pounds of sugar. So it takes about 3 weeks to a month to do that. And this is one of the fumagillin is one of the ingredient we use, mixed it with the syrup, so the bees don't get dysentery. So there's a beekeepers that I bought bees from years ago, and he came from Holland. And oh, I guess my time. Okay, so let's go to the next one. I can see the little timer there, so I'm not sure where I'm at there. That's another piece, another medication we use for mites. So we put two per frames. Then we leave them in there for 6 weeks. We put that in the fall, and we do it in the spring. Next slide, please. This is how we overwinter our bees. We put 4 hives together. We have a special wrap, cover them with snow. And I had very little success in winter bee survivals until I learned from a beekeeper. I spent a couple of days with him on this farm in Alberta, and he taught me how to do it properly. But up here is such a challenge. The winters are longer than down south, so it's a big challenge. And success in beekeeping is if you can get as many hives that survive the winters, because beehives are expensive. I paid $275 a nuke in the spring, so it's an expensive business. Next, I think I'm done now. Okay, well, I guess that was my time. I could have talked for much longer than that, but okay, I guess I'm done.
Excellent. Danielle, thank you for that. Thank you for the slides as well, too. Actually, the other day, Chris from Pito and I were talking about bees and we're trying to understand and can we do it? So actually, you just illustrated that it can be done and you are doing it here. So that's pretty amazing. I think it's a really great illustration of what Amy was talking about when she was explaining about the value chain, production, process, and then distribution. I know on the distribution side, I have had some Aurora honey, and I don't know if you need a spokesperson or someone to endorse the product.
I have no problem selling the honey. Actually, I keep it quiet in Fort Smith here, and then people come and see me, and the honey is gone within a couple of weeks. So no issue for selling honey. I don't even have to advertise.
That's amazing.
That's what people call me in Smith. When I first came to Smith, you know my first name, they call me the honey guy.
That's not too bad if your nickname is Honey. I mean, it could be
better than Garden Lady, which is what I get. So you guys pretty good.
But I'm gonna stick with Daniel. All right, I'm gonna stick with Daniel, and then. But I really appreciate all that information and all the work. One of the things that I do is I work and I talk about leadership, and I think leadership takes many forms. For me personally, I think what leadership is having an idea and then bringing it to life. So in that aspect, from that definition, I think you all are leaders in various ways of being able to have an idea and then making it a reality. I think another thing, a characteristic of people in the North from the communities is that we're forced to be very innovative and creative, mostly just because we just don't have the resources other places like in Southern Canada have. So lack of resources really kind of makes people very creative in the things that they do to achieve the goals that they want. So I think that's something that is not really quantified or qualified enough when we talk about not only food security and food sovereignty, but just the creativity and the imagination that we have within our innovators and leaders within our communities. I think those things are really important to talk about and in any context. But really, thank you for this discussion about building a healthy and sustainable food system in the North. and for the innovative ways which you guys are making it happen.